Good afternoon, guys and ladies. My name is Herman Smith. I'm a software developer. I reside in Cape Town, South Africa, and I believe that there's no better position to be in than tech to change the world for the better. And we're at a dire point. We're at a tipping point, and changing the world is what we need to do as hard and fast as we possibly can right now. At the moment, I work for a company called Synequinon. It's a big data play on HR, but that's not what this talk is about. By a show of hands, how many people here are developers? Okay, cool. And then of those people, how many have dabbled in blockchain, written a smart contract integrated with some type of, right, okay, cool. So it's not a very technical talk. If you're expecting technical, sorry, there might be some JSON in the slides somewhere, but no real code. So having spent a lot of time in the software development space, technologies come and go. Some of them come with great promise. For example, SOA. When SOA arrived on the scene, we were all very excited. But you know what? It actually paved the way for something else, which is microservices, which we use every day, the order of the day. And I believe that blockchain is an evolutionary technology. And in my perspective, don't quote me on this, I think what we'll see in the future is going to be based on the technology we have at the moment, but it's going to be more evolved and a further derivative of what we see. Right. The world was turned upside down when Satoshi Nakamoto published his white paper, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. More than anything else, it introduced us to blockchain. Ever since then, the floodgates have opened and a myriad of industries and companies have adopted an aspect of blockchain. And I think it's such a promising technology that very few industries or platforms will not be gaining a blockchain aspect to them within the next couple of years. But more promising, blockchain technology is the key to enable trust at scale, enabling individuals to help themselves and break free from centralized authorities acting like dams in an intricate network of rivers and streams. The bottom line is really that the internet changed the way we communicate, but I believe blockchain will change the way we trust. The majority of people incorrectly perceive blockchain and Bitcoin as the same thing, crypto. Of course, it's not. It is a decentralized system we trust, and it's not just a single third party that we place our trust in. We place our trust in the cryptography so we can cryptographically sign items to be trusted, prove where they come from, and the origin and provenance. ICSO is the blockchain for impact investment. So impact investment refers to the activity of funding things for a financial gain, but not just that, to actually affect a social, economic benefit to society alongside a financial return. In essence, it can be seen as putting money towards a goal which results in a positive outcome for society. That can include things like access to clean water, energy, education, affordable housing, or even microfinance. Right. According to Bloomberg, sustainable investing has gone from a niche market to something that's actually gaining a critical mass. And enough people are starting to participate, producing a swell which can actually turn the tide. Nearly 9 in 10 US consumers say that they will with great ease, utilize the services or invest in companies that have an interest in causes that they believe in. Among millennials, that's even more pronounced. They're more than twice as likely than other generations before them to purchase products from companies that they view as sustainable. Why now? Impact investments existed for a long time. This includes financial aid and the likes to developing countries. However, the technologies that make this possible have come of age, which basically can be broken into IoT, sensing technology, the decentralized web, and artificial intelligence, as well as blockchain. These 4 components combined allow us to build what is called ICSO. Right, so the problem with traditional impact investment is it's ineffective, it costs too much, there are all these intermediaries. There's a very large buffer of money that go to logistics and getting the wheels rolling. Whereas if more of those funds can actually be plowed into the causes which the impact investments are going towards, more change can be effected. It takes too long, It wastes resources and opportunities. If you think about the UN needing to serve a small community in Senegal, a study needs to be done, reports need to be sent up to headquarters. If somebody on the ground can act immediately, there's a way better chance of it succeeding in a timely fashion. Of course, it's not scalable. Some evaluators need to be flown out to various locations. If you can actually use the technology, sensors, people on the ground as evaluators and verifiers, it's absolutely more scalable. But the bottom line is that the information that come out of impact investment as we see it at the moment is rubbish. It's completely useless. So the loop doesn't get closed. And if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. It also impedes reinvestment. So if a partner invests in an impact project, the likelihood of them reinvesting on a second or a third round diminishes exponentially if they cannot see the impact that took place, the effect of the funds that they contributed to a project. Of course, the solution is knowing with proof of impact. So this new paradigm allows us to lower the costs exponentially, to provide projects, funding for projects, and executing on them. Faster proofing and production, as mentioned before, with sensors and people locally. Optimize resources, programmable capital, for example, escrow contracts on the Ethereum blockchain by means of smart contracts. We can scale rapidly because of decentralized networks, and the rich data can then be utilized as an asset. So not just in terms of the investors getting confirmation of successful turnaround on these projects, but one can make up things. So for example, these assets can be minted into crypto tokens. For a reforestation project, it could be a tree token. You could then theoretically work out the oxygen production those trees then have, and you can potentially exchange them for carbon credits if large corporates are interested in actually gaining carbon credits. All right. So it's a data revolution we're seeing. Web3, which is really the decentralized web, applications running everywhere, not just on servers. Browser extensions, which basically inject API information into every web page you visit. I don't know if you've used MetaMask. So it's very much like a MetaMask clone for the IXO blockchain. What MetaMask does is it basically contains your private key, your public key, as well as your balances, right? And we have a component called the IXO key safe, which we'll get to in a second. So that's our distributed web, which then injects information that it's reading off of the blockchain into the distributed web application, which is more or less a traditional web application, but it basically utilizes these components which we haven't seen before, referring to Web3 or decentralized web. So machine intelligence allows us to more accurately notice patterns in the data. Obviously, a lot of data is being generated by the sensors, for example, in a reforestation project, measuring soil temperature and soil moisture levels as well as CO2. And if somebody had to actually manually sift through that data, it would take ages. But because of the machine learning, we can really get somewhere really quickly where we can evaluate successes, notice trends, and make corrections if necessary. Obviously, connectivity also makes it possible. 5G, Wi-Fi, LoRaWAN, Internet of Things type of protocols. Digital currency allows people to be paid on the fly as things conclude, determined by rules set up in smart contracts and other configurations on projects. And that's just also the part relating to programmable capital. Right. So how we solve the problem? So more or less, it can be broken into everybody who interacts, whether it's a human, whether it's an agent, whether it's an automaton, it needs a primary identifier. We call it a sovereign identifier. It's actually, I don't know if you know, familiar with Sovereign. They are a company that specialize in self-sovereign identity for individuals. And what this does, it basically allows you to be the custodian of your private key, a DID, as well as a public key. And you can sign transactions, and transactions can be verified as originating from you. And this is not necessarily funds transactions, it's activities. I was at this place that long-wise, I did this, and I'm making an attestation to it. That's the self-sovereign identifier part. We've tried to stick as close as we can to schema.org prescriptions relating to global classifiers. For example, person, it's on schema.org. We've created our own ones relating to projects, claims, verifiable claims. Verifiable claims are effectively what I spoke of before. It's basically It's a set of data relating to a schema, relationships between different items in a schema, and these are then signed cryptographically, which are then ledgered onto our blockchain, and from that we can then mint impact tokens, which are the part I referred to earlier that can be exchanged for carbon credits in a future point. If you set up an exchange relating to impact token exchange, you could theoretically barter there and exchange tree tokens for carbon tokens, or education tokens for water tokens. And that's sci-fi at the moment. That part doesn't exist yet, but that's just where we see the whole token economic of the thing going. Right, so IXO has various components. So it's a web app. We call it the IXO web portal. That's got a module. It's got a NPM module called IXO module. That's the part that talks to the PDS, the project data store. Get to that in a second. And all interactions which are not read operations need to be signed cryptographically. That's been done by means of the IXO KeySafe, which is a browser extension. We also have a mobile application that does more or less the same thing for people in the field that need to capture claims, sign them, and submit them. The project data store is, at the moment, it's only running in AWS, but a project owner, somebody who creates a project, let's do a beach cleanup. There's a lady living on the beach coast of Oregon, and she's noticed the really dirty coastline. She can initiate the project, be the project creator, and the PDS she can spin up with a CloudFormation template. There's a lot of work. We can do it in a myriad of different places, but she's the owner of this piece of infrastructure. She can run it off-chain. The data is stored for the project on this off-chain mechanism, and by means of then cryptographic hashes, the same data can be correlated onto our blockchain. That's the PDS. And then we've got the actual IXO blockchain, which is built on top of the Tendermint blockchain, and we use the Cosmos SDK to integrate with it. There are various aspects to Cosmos which allow you to interact between different blockchains. So if you want to interact with Ethereum or Tether or whatever, that's all there. But we basically built our own impact-related modules on top of Cosmos and Tendermint, and that's what we refer to as our IXO blockchain. We have smart contracts which come into play when projects are funded. So effectively, you fund a project by means of IXO tokens, but you also need to have money for gas, so these transactions can run in terms of the contracts setting themselves up, and then payment takes place to the service providers and evaluators. Lastly, the IXO Explorer, which is more or less just a cache. It is really a MongoDB database with a Node API sitting on top of it, accessed via REST. And the reason for that is just it speeds up the reading pace at which data can be read from the blockchain. So a lot of times people speak to me and they're like, but why did you even build this thing on a blockchain? Isn't a blockchain just a really slow database? Well, in some respects, yes. So the reason for us introducing this layer is to speed up the read operations, so we don't have a very slow query or unresponsive site while we're actually fetching data directly from the blockchain. Learned that the hard way. Right. So, as touched on before, for any human or entity to interact with the blockchain, we need to know who they are, right? They need to be legistered. Legistered is a play of words on registering, a DID, and registration. So, to be legistered means that the DID is written. So, a DID is a unique identifier. We'll elaborate on it in a second. But that can then be used to look up the public key for this entity, machine, human, whatever it be. And then subsequent signed transactions can be verified by means of the public key with public key cryptography that the signing took place with the private key correlated to that public key. Right, so the IXO KeySafe, it's very small. I can show it in browser, but effectively it's a really fun little browser extension I wrote. It's a fork of MetaMask, as mentioned before. It's available in the Mozilla App Store as well as the Chrome Web Store. And that's the part of the puzzle which connects all write operations to the blockchain. Effectively, it's a traditional sign-up process. It's a username and a password and a confirmation, after which you get a unique picture, and you get 12 unique words, which is really the mnemonic for your private key. So even if you uninstall the browser extension, but you remember those 12 words, you'll be able to restore your IXO credentials, your DID document, your private key, your public key, and your global, this decentralized identifier, the DID. And you see a similar thing in MetaMask, and effectively that's just a really nifty way of owning your private key, right? So you don't need to have anything on you. You can have a ton of XO tokens or crypto for that matter and walk across the board with nothing on you, buy yourself a machine, install the key safe, punch in your 12 unique words, and you'll have your account restored, right? So that's just the process of keying them in, boom, boom. And obviously you can export it. So where we use that QR code is people need to register or ledger themselves by means of the web. Once they then get the mobile application, which is a React native application, they can now just get the app, go to their browser extension, scan that QR code, and it basically restores it in the app. So you don't need to type anything in again. I think if there's one thing you take away from this talk today, it needs to be the subject of decentralized identifiers. You see a lot of talk still about OAuth and identity providers. This is the future, okay? GDPR becomes much less of an issue once you actually have a user be the sole custodian of their private information. And that's what decentralized identifiers will allow you to do. What is a DID? At a superficial level, it's a new type of globally unique identifier. And by means of cryptography, you can prove who you are by signing verifiable claims. For example, if you need to go to the liquor store and you need to pick up liquor, instead of handing your entire ID to the counter guy, and he can see all your information, you can only attest the fact that you are over 21 years old. That's the mechanism by means of these verifiable claims work. It's a crude example, but effectively it's at the same level as SSL and TLS, which is currently the largest PKI infrastructure in the world, and I believe this is going to be a very disruptive technology. Right, so a decentralized identifier. This is a DID document. You'll notice that there are two fields filled in, the DID and the public key. So once again, the public key is literally just the mechanism by means of which hashes are verified server-side on the blockchain, and the DID is like how you get looked up, how the system finds your public key in the case of being ledgered. So this is just an example of ledgering, but it's very close to how every other interaction on the blockchain works as well. So when you're ledgering your DID onto the blockchain, the top part is your DID document. The bottom part is now the payload with the signature. So the next slide, you can clearly see it. So during registration, this payload, the bottom half, is sent up to the chain. You can see there the third line from the top that's on the bottom that says type DID, add DID. It's literally just the step of ledgering your DID. In this step, that payload is routed to the right method on the right module on the XO blockchain. And then what is happening is the public key gets extracted. The hash is confirmed. The signature value at the bottom is confirmed to have been produced with a private key correlating to the public key in the message. And you registered. Now XO knows about you. So from now on, you can do any other type of creating of a project, putting in a verifiable claim by means of a similar mechanism. But at that step, the only thing that's going to be passed is a similar payload with a signature at the bottom, but your XO DID will be part of the body. So then it'll first have to find your public key by means of the XO DID, and then the next step will be similar as what happened during registration. The hash will be confirmed to have been produced with a private key correlating to the public key that was just looked up by means of the XO DID. Right. So this is just the ledgering process, little video of it. So top right, it showed you because you've got the key safe installed, and you're now just executing the signing operation. Confirms you've now been registered. How the Web3 stuff works at the moment, you need to actually do a page refresh for the code to be re-injected into the DOM. So you'll see that it knows about me, and it knows that I've got an XO balance of 0. Right. So what are the features of this platform? So we've more or less touched on them already. You can launch a project. You can manage a project. These projects can either be based on templates which are provided, or you can build your own templates and then they can be uploaded to a public repository to be utilized by other people launching similar projects than yours. You can deliver services, or people can deliver services on your projects. Verifying agents can confirm that your services did take place. You can invest for impact. So investment takes place at this stage by means of IXO tokens and Ethereum. And then last but not least, you can build applications. Or the cool thing is, that site you just saw, the IXO web portal, that's a product built by IXO. But the idea is that the blockchain is the blockchain for impact. So anybody can build something, not call it IXO, but have the impact aspect be backed by the IXO blockchain. So it's a blockchain which is out there for everybody to use, shared infrastructure. And then, of course, the data being shared to confirm impact having taken place and to confirm that we are actually making progress in the greater scheme of things. So we're going to just go through a little bit of a case study. There's this lady, Jodie Franco. She stays in a region of the Western Cape of South Africa. She stays on a farm, but she's got a lot of invasive plant species there, alien species plants from Australia, and they are way more thirsty than the local plants, so they really are destroying the habitat for the local plants. So she wants to launch a project by means of which these alien vegetation can be cleared. Right. So the first time she has to arrive on the site, she basically can have a look around. You can go to ixo.world if you want to. We've got a couple of projects on there at the moment. And she can view the detail of a project. There's the Togo water project, a couple of other ones. We've got a couple of cool projects on here at the moment. One is a reading project in India, running in Delhi, where we're improving the reading ability of grade 7 girls. And we've got a project for clean water in Togo, as well as in the Cape Flats in South Africa. And we've got an early childhood education program where attendance is taken, and the grant from the government to pay for the kids attending school is actually done via a project on IXO. And then we'll get to the Seneca Park Zoo in a minute, which is also a very exciting project. So what Jodie Franco can now do, she can launch a project, as mentioned before. She has to have the IXO KeySafe installed to be able to interact, write operations to the chain. It's a bit primitive at this stage. This is definitely an aspect that I see changing a lot in the future, but you have to explicitly notice the pop-up, sign every operation you're writing to the blockchain. To users who don't understand the nature of the distributed web, that can be quite disconcerting. But otherwise, if it happens in the background without the user knowing, it's kind of like, are we really? That was a bit of a debate, actually. Do we make it transparently sign every operation that a person is doing to the blockchain, or do we make them aware of the fact that they are signing this operation? So we went with the second option. Right, so if she's creating a project, those projects can either be done by template or a project of her own, a project template of her own. Right, so on the right-hand side, the only components at play at this stage when a DID is being registered is really the IXO KeySafe and the web portal and the web API. So the web API module is also a resource available for anybody who wants to build something similar than this. All the code is on GitHub, so it's all open source. But effectively, she created a project which also correlates to the schema stuff on schema.org, and she was able to sign it with her DID's private key, and subsequently projects can then be fetched with access onto the IXO Explorer cache mechanism. Right, so this over here. When creating the project, this is a template, so you'll notice the field she's capturing there is like, she needs to have 1,000 patches cleared. The dimensions of the patches are like 100 by 100 meters. This is a description of the project, etc. So there's a project. She currently has no service providers or evaluators on the project. And that's kind of where the community aspect of it comes in. So she is an independent person creating the project. She might be able to gain some awareness in her community or other service providers, but she, as the player who created the project, is kind of stuck at this point before somebody comes along, like Sam Smith, who's got a tree maintenance business. He is also quite keen in removing alien plants. So she contacts him and asks him, don't you want to sign up on this project? He says yes. He visits the site. He also has to go through the rigmarole of installing the KeySafe, signing up as a service provider on the project, which he's going to do now. Okay, he's already done it, so he's now submitting a claim. So these claims are part of the template. So when she created the project, this is the project, these are what claims look like on the project, and Sam is now submitting his first claim. So there's a picture of the before with the alien vegetation and afterwards where it's been removed. So he's put a claim in, it's a verifiable claim that's signed, it's registered on, this is now ledgered, not registered, it's now ledgered onto our blockchain, so it's irrefutably there ad infinitum, forever and ever. But it's kind of stuck in a space until an evaluator can come along. So he's a service provider, Katie Spence is an evaluator. She's an academic, she's independent from Sam Smith and his business. She might know Jody Franco somehow via the grapevine, but she's an ecological aware person who can now independently come and verify the claim made by Sam Smith. So there we go. She can evaluate the claim, she can view it, and because she's also registered onto our blockchain by means of a DID, she can interact with it and approve the claim. Right. So that's all good and well. There's a project dashboard which Jody can view. So the project dashboard indicates the number of claims that's gone through, how the project is progressing, but it also has the management part relating to who are the service providers on this project. So after Sam signed up to be a service provider, she needs to say, this guy looks legitimate, I want to approve him as a service provider. And the inverse of it is to get Kate approved as well. So there's another section relating to evaluation agents. There we go. So Kate is also being approved. Right, and now she's got people who can participate in this project for her and make things take place. Right. So verification oracles. So we spoke about a use case where it's all people, but it's very possible that you can have a sensor. So for example, if you're concerned about the urban population of owls and the infestation of rats, and you don't want people to put poison down, you build owl boxes. And these owl boxes, you might get a service provider who's a woodwork company, and he gives you owl boxes, and he gets some form of a recognition through the IXO platform in terms of his involvement. And then service providers can put these up, and you can have IoT devices parked in these boxes. And if an owl box is confirmed to contain an owl 3 nights a week, there might be a kick out which then relates to somebody getting paid, the box provider, so you can build another box for another entity. So it really is like building momentum. So my point is just that a verification oracle doesn't have to be a person. It can also be an autonomous bot confirming data coming in. So if the data comes in and it matches up to the signatures of which were contained on the claim, the verified attestation, it can go through without any human interaction, and payment can take place seamlessly. Right. So what we can do is we can fund projects to achieve results. We can invest for impact and allow turnaround investment because you can actually see the impact in terms of the data that's coming out of it. We spoke about building applications, and at this stage we've got one application which we built ourselves, but the dream is that there's actually another one. There's a TV show, a reality TV show called SDG Futures. Somehow it's affiliated to the Fox network. I don't know, I can't say much more than that. But they wrote so if you go to sdgfutures.com or .global, they've built an app relating to this reality TV show where people can now pitch for projects, also utilizing our blockchain. And that's the second application that's out there at the moment. Right. So the data is the payoff. The data is the means by means of which you prove impact is taking place. The money that got funded towards a goal did achieve something, and that then basically, it can be either financial return. You get IXO tokens back until the IXO tokens have a real value and they've proven their complete utility. They're worthless, but you can feel good about funding a change in society, and it's likely that you can reinvest. Right. What that data also allows us to do is to determine intrinsic value. For example, in Indonesian teak, I want to build a pergola outside my house. How much I pay for that teak is related to how much of the teak is out there on the market and how many people are willing to pay for it. It's a market-driven price fix. However, with data, we can determine intrinsic value. So we can say, what is that forest worth in its entirety? the biomass it houses, the species which are there, the oxygen it produces while it's existing, and even work in the tourism opportunities it has. And if you can then equate that to the value of the dead trees on the shipping pallet going to your house, you can convince developing world communities to rather live with their forests and get the extended continued benefit of them existing as opposed to the quick payoff of selling it. Right, so the Seneca Zoo, they're in upstate New York. It's a really progressive zoo, do a lot of good work. They've got a reforestation project on ICSO. So some of the funds for an attraction at the zoo, it might be the lemurs or something, goes directly towards this project. And what they did initially is they basically did a due diligence where they flew drones over the entire island and mapped by means of LiDAR the forest canopy. And they also measured things like soil moisture and CO2 levels in the various places on the island, some of them quite remote. And this is a good case for IoT because what they then did is they planted soil moisture sensors in even some of the most remote locations on Madagascar and then started replanting trees. So the species which are indigenous to the area, which should have been grown there. And we can't measure the impact yet, but the theory is that it's only really kicked off in March this year. But as time goes on and the trees grow, we'll get a positive climb in, or a decline in CO2 levels, and the soil moisture should return, allowing saplings to grow. And it's just a very exciting collaboration between Africa and the US, and ICSO doing something good for the island of Madagascar and for everybody. Right, this is a very early prototype of the moisture sensor and the CO2 module. Obviously, that's still on a breadboard and Arduino-ish. They're a lot more compact and resilient now, but a cool piece of technology that those guys put together to evaluate their claims. So the fact is that all of these projects that you create are in some way aligned to the SDG goals, the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And it circles, let's go to the next one, we'll come back to that. So it circles around a couple of different subjects, like we want to eradicate poverty, zero hunger, clean water, free and fair education, equal rights, life above water, life underwater. And by aligning the projects we do to the UN SDG goals, we can make sure that we're addressing these needs and people can think globally but act locally, because the UN goals are international, but this is an enabling tool for people to act on the ground, to source funds for what they need to do at a global scale, not waiting for grants and governments to come together, but to do things for themselves. And what it does is it basically creates an entire new impact economy. So state subsidies can happen on a local scale, private and institutional development finance at an international scale, philanthropy, volunteering, et cetera, et cetera. It kind of brings a lot of realms in the impact space together around some technology which kind of like can act like the hub for it. Yeah, so that, and once again, the open end at this stage is how do we now make a token exchange where people can now exchange their tokens and pitch that towards governments or airlines or large corporates to actually buy into, invest for impact, but also get a return or some type of carbon credit or benefit from the whole thing. And that's really the whole story. So questions and answers.
All right. I'm going to bring the microphone over for folks to have questions, so if they show up on the recording.
A very cool project, and thank you for the presentation. My question is, what aspect of this ensures that your evaluators do not have some sort of conflict of interest? And I saw you did have an approval step there, but is that just sort of a superficial, you know?
Yes, so as far as the entities go, humans are inclined to be involved in corruption, okay? Apart from needing to have your own DID, I mean, constraints can be built in that at the moment, the service provider can't be the project creator, okay? I mean, there's ways around that. You have two browser extensions so you can sign things with different DI with different private keys associated to different DIDs. But it's completely legal for a project owner to also be an evaluation agent. So not the service provider doing the claim, but the person evaluating that the claim took place. So yeah, so it's definitely something that I've thought of before. It is possible to game the system, but hopefully by means of cryptographically knowing that it's a different entity who signed every interaction, it is somebody unique. And you can take it further. We can talk about it afterwards if you want, but it's definitely a concern that I know exists.
Next question. Going once.
Can you tell technology stack what you
Hold on.
Yes.
Wait, microphone. You have one job.
Can you give us the highlights? What are the technology stack you used for the Explorer?
Absolutely. Let's go back to that slide so I can talk to that. So the question is, what is the technology stack involved in this platform, right? So, I'm going too fast. Okay, there you go. It's got a mind of its own. So basically, the front end is React. The back end is a combination of TypeScript, Node.js, and MongoDB. So let me just find that slide. Where is it? Oh, the various components to XO. Here we go. Right. So let's start from the left. The XO web portal, that is a React.js application. We use Redux for state, and it basically is very light. It consumes data from the Explorer in a read fashion. The Explorer is MongoDB, which is a cache mechanism. So as the blockchain mines blocks, XO Explorer syncs. So basically, every new block, it's a very busy process. It basically syncs data, and there's a bit of a latency between something happening on the blockchain and then surfacing on the XO Explorer, but it's quite fast. And if it goes down, it picks up where it left off and it repopulates itself. Then the PDS, which is the project data, that's TypeScript, and it's also got a MongoDB database sitting beneath it. There's some readers. We've got some RabbitMQ. A very funny point about that. Okay, remind me that I get back to the PDS. The XO KeySafe is purely React.js. It does a bit of storage. I think it's IndexedDB we use to store data, but it's so little. There's no point in doing it. We also encrypt the data that's stored in browser. But if you're a hacker, that's probably the place you need to attack first, because if a device that your user owns has private keys on it, it's not safe, no matter what. Okay. Okay. The blockchain itself. So when we started building the POC, there was no blockchain. It was actually also just Node.js, and it wrote to like a database. I don't know if it was Postgres or something. We started evaluating a lot of different chains that we could utilize, and we really liked the Cosmos initiative. So Cosmos is now on version 1. We went live with this project in November last year, and our largest, most important piece of tech wasn't out of beta yet. It is now. So we've actually involving the Cosmos guys to do their thing and make sure that we actually are complete as far as the latest developments on that goes. So Tendermint is the blockchain. Cosmos is the SDK between the blockchain and what we work in. So we write Go to add enhancing modules onto the blockchain, which then by means of the Cosmos SDK integrate into the Tendermint blockchain. And that's how that's put together. Back to the project data store, there's a part to this that you don't see, the smart contracts on Ethereum. When you fund a project, the PDS has a couple of components. So it's basically the REST aspect that gets called from XO module. Then there's a part that does persistence, and then there's a part that can confirm funds in a wallet on Ethereum. So outside of what you see here in the XO web portal, you'd say fund a project. You would then have a signing operation go to MetaMask to fund your project with a certain amount of ERC20 tokens, which are so the XO tokens are ERC20 tokens, and you also need to then make sure that you have gas to transfer the tokens around, right? And then the PDS has a part which is polling that we go 6 blocks past that operation where the funding took place. So, okay, I'm jumping a step. So check that there are funds. The funds get transferred. Confirm that the funds arrive at the project wallet's end, which is now inside the smart contract, right? Then we poll the Ethereum blockchain to make sure that 6 blocks go past and that the funds are still there. At that point, the project can be deemed as funded. And basically, all of this is happening by means of something being put onto Rabbit and making sure that it goes through the correct workflow from project created, project unfunded, project funded, project started, and project closed, and project paid out. So there are 6 phases. I think I went too far, but that's the technology stack.
So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this session. Herman, thank you very much for sharing your expertise and experience with us. A round of applause for Herman, please.
Thank you, guys.